Okay. It may have just prompted you to consent to recording because I just hit the record button.
Okay, roger that. Let's see here. Uh, oh, gotta go over here.
Concord, Ohio. How long you been in the business?
The ink is still wet on my license, my friend. That's how long. It's still I'm waiting.
That's fantastic.
So that's great.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You joined an awesome company.
That's what. Yeah, got a lot of friends here. A lot of support.
Good. Hi, Amy.
Hey,
How's it going?
it's good.
Great, great. Welcome to the call.
Thank you. Is tonight the last night?
It is the last night, and then we're going to do this thing again next month, starting next month. So if you didn't get
Okay.
enough, we're going to do it again. So that's right. That's right. So I'm going to say good evening to everyone. So Daniela, hello.
Hello.
Hey, welcome. And then I see Marla.
Hello.
welcome. And is it, I don't want to mispronounce this, but is it Jashelle?
It is. Hello.
Hello, welcome. And then Giuliano, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. We've got a few more joining, so I'm going to give it just a minute to get all these other ones that are in the waiting room into the call here real quick. Melanie, good evening. Hello, Renee.
Evening.
And then is it, I don't want to mispronounce this either. Is it Maritane?
Yes, this is she.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you. All right. Well, I'm going to get us started, and then we may have a few others that join as we get going. But so my name is Jake Marr. I am the interim team leader and general manager at our market center in Wichita, Kansas. And so for those that might not know where that is, if you look at a map of the United States, we're almost right in the middle of the United States. So we are a Midwestern state for sure. And we're super excited to be on the call with you all tonight and to talk about winning with buyers. And so you guys have had a great session, and this one's going to wrap us up. So this is going to be our last Ignite session for this round. And buyers seems like a very appropriate subject to be talking about right now based on everything that's going on in the news, don't we think? So let's just get started here, and I'm going to catch myself up with our notes here. And so this session is the last session in our transaction section. So you would have had this a few weeks ago, but a life event happened in my life, and so we moved it to the last section. And so I'm a dad of three and husband, and one of our kiddos was ill, and so I ended up having to call an audible, and Alana was gracious enough to schedule me back at the end of this. So we're winning with buyers this evening, and so I'd like to start out with some wins. So anybody that had wins from the last section where it was plan your future, who'd like to share a success story? And this is where everybody turns their cameras off and hits the mute button. And I don't see anybody for about 45 seconds while we just wait it out. So David, I'm going to pick on you for a minute because you and I got to chat for a little bit before here. And so you're new to the business, and tell me a success story from the last week since you last had your last Ignite session.
Oh, a success story would have been that, getting to create checklists and, getting to make templates for the buyers and the sellers, going through and making sure you have all the appropriate questions to ask them. One, obviously for the buyer, one for the seller, double checking those and getting everybody's input to see, if you can modify those in any way to, create the perfect one, if you will, for different buyers and different sellers. Everybody's different. So you got to go with their attitude and their latitude and see how they are, and everybody's personality is different. So obviously those are going to change with every customer.
Yep. Nope. I love that. That's great. Thank you for sharing. Who else would like to share a win since last week? And it can be any win. It doesn't have to be specific to that last Ignite session. It could be a new buyer, a new seller, a contract, a successful appointment. Who's got a win that they'd love to share? Okay, well, I'll chum the water a little bit as well. So we all attended in our market center, a good chunk of us attended the Value Squared training last week. And if you've not yet attended that, I would highly recommend it. It ties right into everything that we've covered in Ignite, working with buyers, working with sellers, and it's highly relevant information that you're going to be able to be a stronger, more informed agent with your clients. And it's a great professional course, not just for you, but for any of your co-op agents as well. And so I'd highly encourage that if you've not yet attended it. So, okay, so I'm going to read through this real quick. So we are going to next talk about any challenges that we might have encountered over the last week. And so, David, you shared some successes. I'm going to call on somebody else here. So, Renee, did you encounter any challenges in the last week?
Last week I was not in that session. I think this is my first time. I never have the chance to review anything yet.
Okay, fantastic. Fair enough. How about Marla?
You want a challenge or a win?
I would take either or both.
Well, I'm not sure what you would call it, but we've been looking to replace the roof on our garage with the gutters. So I've been calling around getting some quotes from local contractors. So we got about 5 quotes and we decided on one of them that we wanted to go with. And I ended up calling all the other ones, telling them that I found another contractor, but asked them if I could keep their information handy in case I have a client down the road that may need a repair. And they were, I felt guilty for not accepting their services, but they were very thankful that I wanted to pass their information on. So I kind of feel like I lost, like I didn't get their business or they didn't get my business, but I'm going to share their information to give them business.
Sure, sure. Yeah, no, I don't think you lost it all there. I think you started a new relationship that can turn into a win and a long-term relationship as that grows. So that sounds great. That's not a challenge at all. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Daniela? Yeah, absolutely. Daniela, any success story or challenge you'd like to share this evening?
Well, I'm a rookie, and my ex's in-laws family, who's going to be my first clients, want to offer me 2%, and I'm not going to take it. It's 3% or I don't work with you. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. No, yeah, I love it. Know your value. That's fantastic. Good for you. All right. Anybody else that would love to share tonight? All right. We're going to keep going here. Hang on. We've got some more people in the waiting room. Let me let them in real quick. Okay. All right. And real quick, can everybody hear me okay? And can everybody see my screen?
Yes and yes.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you for answering, Marla. I was watching for head nods and I don't have very many people on camera, so not a very effective way there. Okay, so today is our final segment of Ignite. And so we have covered becoming the real estate expert of choice by building your value proposition. We've also covered lead generation and lead follow-up. Lead generation and follow-up is how you got to where you are today. And I love hearing that we've got newer agents on the phone as well as some seasoned agents. That's fantastic. From here, we're going to cover the buyer piece and the buyer presentation. And then we are going to launch. And so with that in mind, I keep using my arrows to advance the slides, but I'm on a web-based piece. So today, by the end of today, we are going to be equipped to identify a qualified A buyer with follow-up and appointment, apply approaches to request an appointment from an A buyer, demonstrate skill in handling buyers' reluctance to committing to you, and explain the buyer consultation and agreement. And so those are our big rocks for the day, and that's what we're going to accomplish today. So do we have any questions on that before we keep going? Okay. Terrific. Okay, so the right approach to close for a meeting is the only approach. Just ask for it. As said by a guy that we all might know, Mr. Gary Keller. And so that quote pretty much sums it up. And when you find a client that is able, ready, and willing, we simply just need to ask them to meet. And that's part of what we're going to cover today. And so in the previous sessions, you did learn about qualifying buyers and why that's important for you and for your buyers. And so from that recap, who can share, when you guys have talked about that in the past, qualifying buyers, what did that sound like? What does that mean to you when you hear me say qualifying your buyers?
I would say it's a buyer that has a pre-approval letter from a lender.
Perfect. Yep. So that's the able part. What's the other two components? So we've got able, ready, and willing. So if I've got the pre-approval in hand, what's next? I'm ready, right? So I've got to be ready to go spend some time and energy on finding that, and then willing, meaning I'm willing to actually write that offer when I find that property that matches what I've told you is important. And so it's interesting because most people have heard ready, willing, and able. And Gary helped kind of turn that on its head and said, you need to start out with able. Somebody might be ready and willing, but if they're not able, you're going to spend a lot of time helping buyers that aren't able to buy a house. So start out with able, help get them qualified, and then go into that next piece of ready and willing. And so that was a great learning for me early in my career. And so that's jumped out in that space. And so anything that anybody else would add around the able, ready, and willing and qualifying your buyers? Okay.
I think one thing is to know like the timetable. I don't think just because somebody's ready doesn't mean I'm ready today.
Right.
So
right.
that could also be a challenge.
That's right. Is that timetable, is that in the next 14 days or is that in the next 12 months? Right? Yeah, great point. Okay. So we've seen this graph before. Does anybody recall what we called this earlier in Ignite?
Lead generation?
Yeah, great. Lead generation and database model. That's fantastic. You're right. So what did you do to get an A qualified buyer? It's kind of a generic question, but it follows this chart if you're thinking about what that answer should be.
Follow up?
That's it. Yeah. So we capture the lead and then we follow up. The fortune is in the follow-up. And so we always want to do that follow-up. And so an A qualified buyer is one who is able, ready, and willing to do business. And we like to teach it saying in the next 10 to 14 days, right? So that's a pre-approval letter that's pretty fresh and is somebody that's looking and ready and willing to write that offer on that property if they find that right property with you. Why is that important for you to have more of a condensed time frame that says, hey, I'd like to buy something in this case, in the next couple of weeks, if I found it?
I'm thinking it might be important because the transaction is so, like we discovered yesterday, that there's so many steps before we get to the close. So the sooner we can get to this next step, the sooner we can get to the close.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. And what does it do for how you prioritize the use of your time? If you're working with buyers who are ready to write an offer and willing in the next 2 weeks, is that different than a buyer who says, I might be willing to write an offer in the next 6 months? Sure. Yeah. So that starts to kind of change. So when you think about an A, B, or C buyer in your pipeline, that A buyer is really like they're ready to buy now. They're able, they're ready, and they're willing. If that right property matches them, they're going to pull the trigger on it, and you guys are ready to go. Um, so that's a priority for us because that is important to the buyer. We can solve their need, and we're in business and relationship with them right now. And that's the fuel in your engine for your business. So that's great. So how do we follow up with A buyers? What does follow up look like with an A buyer? How often should we be doing that?
Every 3 days.
At least, yeah. If they're ready to buy within the next 10 to 14 days, then we should probably be talking to them about daily, whether that's through text or email or a phone call. And it's not necessarily a, hey, are you ready? Hey, did you find it? It's not that kind of follow-up. It's a value add. And if they're ready and if they're able, ready, and willing to buy in the next 14 days, let's brainstorm real quick. What could be items of value that we could offer our buyers over the course of a short period of time, but we're doing it daily? And it may be different daily, but what are some of the options that we could provide them?
I would
What?
say information about the next step.
Yeah, information about the next step. That's a great one. What tends to update throughout the day and overnight that we all check for
Rates?
rates? Yep. What else?
Oh, no, wait.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's super obvious. No silly answers here. So rates is a great one.
I was gonna say the MLS, we check to see.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's a fantastic reason to follow up. Hey, Mr. Buyer, Mrs. Buyer, did you see this great property that came on the market today, just now, just yesterday, just an hour ago? Whatever that follow-up sounds like, but rates are a good one. New houses, new listings are a great one. Price reductions on maybe one they've seen previously is another great one. So we often get caught up in this mindset of, oh gosh, what am I going to say if I'm going to follow up with that much follow up in a short period of time? Um, it starts to get into that limiting belief of what am I going to say, and does it sound pushy or salesy? And the reality is no, it's truly just value add. Hey, did you see the rates just went down? Hey, did you see this great listing that just popped up? Or hey, did you see this price reduction that just came on? Or hey, did you see there's an open house at this property on Sunday or Saturday? And so you can take any and all of those variations and turn that into just a little bit of a touch, a little bit of a touch, a little bit of a touch. And is it Natisha? Yeah. I
Yes,
want to
yes.
ask, yeah, I want to make sure I pronounce it correctly. So if you're a buyer in that spot and I'm saying, hey, Natisha, here's a rate update. Just want to let you know. Looks like rates went up today, or looks like went down today. Um, does that feel pushy to you?
No, that feels informative because then I
Yeah.
can make a decision and say, oh, they went down. Okay, will they go down more? Let's go for it.
Yeah, right. So yeah, so the more we can shift towards that service-minded attitude and we just keep it about them, providing that value, that daily follow-up for those able, ready, and willing buyers is going to help turn that lead and that appointment into business. And so, any questions or thoughts on that approach? Is anybody out there feeling like, gosh, I don't know that I'd want to do a daily follow-up?
Well,
Okay.
when you say there's a timeline of 14 days, then it doesn't seem so bad. But I guess when you don't have that timeline, you might feel a little bit of apprehension to say, okay, I'm going to call you every day, or how often is it going to start feeling like I'm just pushing?
Right. That is terrific. I love that point. So how do we make sure that we know that timeline is really 10 to 14 days? And David, I'll call on you next. So Natisha, how do you think we figure out that part?
Realize you were asking me that
Oh,
follow-up.
no, you're good. You're good. You're good.
What were you say that again?
Yeah, no. So you had a great point. So let's say their timeline is 30 days or 90 days or 180 days. We certainly are going to change our cadence, right? Of how
Right.
frequently we're following up.
That's
So
right.
if it is that 10 to 14 days, and that daily follow-up feels a little more appropriate in that space, how do we know for sure that it's 10 to 14 days versus 180 days? How would we figure that out?
Now, are we figuring out whether or not, okay, it depends on where we are. That's what I'm trying to figure out, where we are, because they should be making some sort of offer, and they should have made some sort of maybe payment towards the offer, I'm thinking. I'm not sure.
Potentially. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, potentially. So I'm going to pause real quick. And when we talked earlier in Ignite about pre-qualifying buyers, um, and David, before I go to mine, let me ask you, were you going to answer that question?
I was going to say, you know, when your initial with your initial meeting, you're going to come up with a timeline. You're going to ask them, how would you want to be, you know, contacted? Is it going to be daily, you know, once a week? If there's anything pertinent, I'm going to give you a flow chart of what's going to happen. Here's what's going to happen next and next and next. And if that changes, I will be in contact with you to give you an update. You know, you don't want to bug them, I don't think, every single day, you know, unless they want to be bugged every single day. Or they'll dictate to you how they want to be informed.
I love that.
Some people are, you know, don't bug me. I'm busy with my own work and kids and whatever, blah, blah, blah. You know, call me 4 o'clock on a Wednesday or something like this, or whatever it is. And then unless something pertinent or immediate comes up, then yeah, you know, then you go ahead and, hey, I had to make this phone call because rates have changed, or, you know, this is dramatic, whatever happened. You know, hate to bug you, but this is what's going on. But I think you guys would have that initial confrontation as to where in the beginning, how things would be set up. And if there's something was, like I said, more pertinent or whatever, then that would change.
Agreed. Yeah. Nope. I think that's fantastic. And so we're all close this thought up on this question that I was asking is often, let's say I've got an online lead or a referral from a family or a friend, and I'm calling to schedule the appointment with that potential buyer, and I'm calling to make that appointment. In that phone call, I'm going to do a little bit of pre-qualification, and that in that pre-qualification conversation, I'm going to ask just a handful of questions. A, you know, are you working with a lender, or have you been pre-approved through a lender, or are you buying cash, right? So I'm going to understand what their general approach is in that space. So if they say, yes, I'm going to work with a lender, no, I've not yet talked to one, and no, I'm not paying cash. So we know that they're not yet able, because we haven't confirmed their purchase power. And so we want to make sure that we're going to have that piece of the conversation ready to go. But in that same conversation, so Natisha, and you don't have to answer back, but Natisha, so, hey, you know what? Fantastic. I'm excited to spend some time with you and go over this buyer's agreement and buyer presentation that we've got that shows you the value we bring to our clients. And let me just ask you this. So once you're approved with your lender, how soon do you anticipate buying a house? Would you say that if the right property popped up in the next 2 weeks, you'd be ready to write that offer? And if they say, you know what, yeah, then you know what kind of buyer they're going to be in the time frame. If they say no, you know, I'm actually in a lease for 6 months, so my time frame is actually, you know, in that, you know, 5 to 6 month range, because I've got to make sure that I fill out my lease and don't pay any early penalties. You start to get that time frame on that phone call, so then you can go into your buyer's presentation kind of more informed around what you're going to talk through. So that's that piece of it, and it really helps you prioritize the use of your time. And it's a great practice to get into. So we're going to step into this slide, 7-step buyer service cycle. So let's look at it. And this is also in your participant guide if you guys have that pulled up or printed off. And through Ignite, we've talked about a lot of models, and this is the proven model right here to reap success with buyers regardless of any market. So rates go up, rates go down, inventory is tight, inventory is not tight. This is the model that's going to continue to help you have a great experience for your buyers and success from contract to close. And so let's just walk through this real quick. So, David, would you mind just reading us the categories of each of those seven sections? I think you might be on mute, David.
All right, number 1, leads to appointments. Number 2, prepare for the buyer's consultation. Number 3, buyer consultation. Number 4, find a home. Number 5, offer and negotiate the contract. Number 6, contract to close, I'm sorry. And number 7, post-close systems.
Perfect. Thank you. So simply put, the leads to appointments, that's just your lead generation and your lead follow-up. Number 2, preparing for the buyer consultation. That's really getting ready for what we just talked through. And then the buyer consultation is what we're going to actually get into today. Preparing for the buyer consultation, we're going to talk through quite a bit of that on today's call as well. Finding the home, that's what you would have covered in step 16 of Ignite with the working with buyers and sellers. The offer and negotiate piece, you would have covered that in Ignite sessions 17 and 18. And then the contract to close and the post-close systems, those were all part of day 19. So each one of these sections is supported through different components of Ignite that we've covered and that you still have access to. So if there's any of those sessions that you want to refresh, revisit, I'd encourage you to continue to go back and leverage those. And if you have trouble finding it, feel free to call or email or text. I put my contact information in the chat as well. And so you're welcome to reach out in that space as well. So far, you've prepared yourself to show your leads and contacts the value that you bring in your real estate journey. You've lead generated, you've followed up on your leads, and you've qualified them in order to know how you're going to follow up how your follow-up should be structured. So today we're going to go about moving those A leads into appointment. And again, A leads are the ones that are able, ready, and willing to buy in the next 10 to 14 days. So I'm going to pause there. I'm going to take us to this slide, and I'm just going to pause and ask for any ahas that you guys have had so far that we've covered.
I just got in. It was really hard getting in. So I think a few people are probably having a hard time getting in on the call.
Yeah, I had the same issue too. I was out there for like half hour.
Yeah, thank you. We went to do, I could see him in the waiting room, and when I'd go to admit, it wasn't giving me the option to say admit. It was just saying mute or unmute, but it was not doing that. So I'm hoping that we finally got everybody in. So apologize for the technical difficulties in that space.
I would say that my aha is the changing around of the ready, willing, and able, and starting with the able.
Yeah, that's a great one.
I would agree. That was mine too. I'm just flipping those words around makes a whole new mindset about it.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. I'll tell you a quick funny story around that aspect. When I was a new agent and just starting, I was learning through many processes and such as well. And my supervising broker at the time, he might have chuckled a time or two saying, Jake, you're doing a lot of charity work. And so it was in reference to the fact that I have a heart to help people. And so I thought I was helping them, but I was not in the right order of able, ready, and willing. I was ready, willing, and able. And so I needed to reverse that and get them qualified so that I was truly helping them by getting them qualified and empowering them to shop for what they would qualify for. And if they didn't qualify up front, getting them the help they needed to get on track to start qualifying in the future. And so it was a kind way of my broker getting me corrected. So that was fun. But all right, well, let's keep rolling. So we're going to talk about how to convert those A buyers into the buyer consultation appointments so where you can finally win the buyer and get that buyer agency signed. And so keys to converting your A buyers. So as we discussed, the keys to converting the A buyers into your buyer appointments is to respond right away to your lead inquiries, get valid and complete contact information, saving it to command and creating an opportunity in command, determining their motivation so that you can speak to it, and then setting an appointment specifically with the time and the date as soon as possible. And so I want to talk through those for just a moment. So it may seem obvious, but for the sake of the call, why is it important to respond to those leads right away? Why is it important to be quick to respond to the leads?
Because there's always an opportunity for someone else.
That's right. That's right. And if a person has raised their hand, whether it's through an online lead or a comment to a friend or a family that's made its way to you, is it possible that their mind is more ready to receive the conversation that you are ready to deliver if you catch them in that moment, as opposed to catching them at a later time when it may be not in that moment? So responding to those leads right away is important. Valid and complete contact information to save to command. So who can tell me what pieces of information do we want to get in command?
The phone number, the email address. Yeah. Yeah.
Maritain, I heard phone number and email address. Did I miss anything else? It kind of cut out a little bit.
The phone number, email address, and maybe the mailing address as well.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. Name, phone number, email address, mailing address, if you can get that as well. That's going to give you great information to market around current neighborhoods, as well as drop them into mail campaign. And then determining their motivation so you can speak to it. So what does that mean?
You want to know if they are a serious buyer or not.
Yeah. Serious and why, right? Why do they want to make a move?
Mm-hmm.
And so for those that have read MREA and Shift, you'll know, as Gary says, we can motivate people, but we can't motivate people. And the difference is they have their own motivation. And so once we know that, we can help craft our delivery of what they're saying to us to help support their motivation, but we can't spark a motivation in them. So we have to understand what's motivating them to say, hey, I want to buy right now, or hey, I want to buy next year, or hey, I want to invest in this. And then why? Is it they need to upsize, they need to downsize, they want to change neighborhoods, they want to invest in real estate for wealth building for the future, they want to invest in real estate for their generational wealth for their children. We don't know until we ask, but we need to ask so we can speak to it. And then set the appointment for the date and time for as soon as possible. And this one really kind of speaks back to the first one about responding right away. why do we want that appointment for as soon as possible?
It allows you to, I don't want to say force, but kind of encourage them not to change their mind.
Yeah.
Or to
Perfect.
move forward.
Yeah, it's kind of that old strike while the iron's hot, right? It's kind of one of those old adages in that space, but it also, from a level of professionalism, and this is a healthy way to see that, from a level of professionalism, it also puts you in a positive light that says, hey, listen, I respect your time, I respect your desire and your motivation to find a new property. And so I want to make sure I get in front of you as soon as possible to honor that. So it also puts you in that professional space with them. So from a public safety announcement standpoint, I always want to make sure that we know if you're meeting new buyers, new clients, best practices are to do those appointments in your market center or a public place for safety until you've established that relationship and know what you're working with there. So any questions or comments on that slide? Okay.
Jake, I have a question. Where are
Yeah.
you at? Where are you at in our book?
So we just finished. So I've got a facilitator's guide. So mine's going to be a little bit different than yours, but we just covered converting your A buyers. So keys to converting your A buyers. We're getting ready to head into the 7 close to appointment tactics.
That's page 14.4.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you very much,
Yeah.
guys.
Thanks for asking. Okay, so this is where we get into the skill side of it in a big way. So now that you know you have an A lead that you're going to close for the appointment, don't leave any conversation without asking for the appointment multiple times. And the worst thing they can say is no. But remember your value proposition and go from there. And these various tactics are various ways of asking for the close. I'm not simply going to say, hey, David, are you ready to set that appointment up? No. Hey, David, are you ready to set that appointment up? No. We're not going to do that. We're going to be mindful of the conversation and know where we're at and explore that relationship to where we can really feel like we're adding value and ready to add value at a higher level at the appointment. And so success in this job that we know is as much about mindset as hustle. So remember the 6 personal perspectives that we previously covered and remove the limiting beliefs. And so no is not a no to you. No is not yet now, because I either have unanswered questions or I'm not yet sure of what my next steps are. And so that's an opportunity for further conversation when you hear no. So let's do this. So we're going to review some of the tactics from this slide, and we're going to talk through them a little bit. And so in your participant guide, this shall be on your page as well. But we're going to talk first about the show the benefits. So in general, people are more likely to go along with something that you suggest if you explain the benefit to them. That generally makes sense. So for example, if I were to say to Amy, if spending 30 minutes with me could save you hours of time and thousands of dollars in your home search, would that be of benefit to you?
And I would say absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. Let's meet. Right. So that's a show the benefits type close. The take back close is a technique that puts an offer in front of the buyer, but then subtly creates a fear of missing out that they may not be able to get it. And that's the take back close. And so, Maritane, so I've enjoyed talking with you. So to be honest, I don't know whether I'll be of help to you or not. However, I'd be honored if we could meet to find out. So how about we meet tomorrow?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're okay. No response necessary. That's a role play. So that's an offer of a take back where I have value. I know I have value,
Mm-hmm.
but based on our conversation, I'm not sure that that's going to be a match for us. So let's meet just to discover if that's a match or not. So it's a little bit of I've got value. Would you be interested? Well, never mind. It may not be a value, but we could explore it. Let's talk. So that's the take back close. Um, the negative positive close. This is a way of backing into the appointment. So, Jashelle, would you be offended if I asked if we could meet to go over all of this in a little more detail? I'm free tomorrow. What time works best for you?
I would love to get together. What does 10 a.m. look like for you?
Yeah, perfect. So that's the negative positive close. The give them what they're looking for is quickly piquing the buyer's interest by giving them exactly what they're looking for, information on interesting comparable properties in this case. And so if I were to say, Marla, hey, yes, absolutely, let's meet at my office and I can give you the specific details about that property. And then, I'll let you know about similar properties that are also for sale. What time works for you? 10 o'clock or 2 o'clock?
I'll go with 2.
Perfect. Great. I'll see you then. And then then the trial close goes like this. And this is really testing the waters first. So this is finding out if you and your client genuinely agree. And so Melanie, can you see how receiving a list of all the new homes on the market in your price range would be helpful in your home search? And then the assumptive close. So assumptive closes assumes the close and prevents them from saying no. And so Juliana, it sounds like we should meet. I'm available most times this week. So what time works best for you?
Tomorrow?
And then tomorrow, yeah, I've got 11 o'clock and 4 o'clock available tomorrow. Which one works best for you?
4. 4
Perfect.
is
Great.
good.
I'll see you then. I appreciate it. And so I'm going to pause right there. That's the various close pieces. And I will say in your participant guide, I'm going to pause and ask, do you guys see the sample scripts in there other than just the title? So those scripts that I was reading to you, do you guys see those sample scripts?
No.
No, it
Okay.
looks like they just have lines for us to write in.
Okay. So do me a favor in the chat, take a minute, drop your emails, and I will I will scan this and just send you the PDF of those scripts that I just said. So you don't have to try and write those down.
Did you, Jake,
Yeah.
did you start with the one that said, I understand, here are a few things to consider?
I understand here are a few things to consider.
If the buyer chooses to look on their own or buyer relies on searching online. Did you say those?
Nope, I don't think we're at that point yet. So
Oh,
I think
because that's the page we're on. Okay, go ahead. Never mind.
Yep. I think you're ahead of us there. But yeah, no, these are just the sample scripts for 1 through 6 on this slide that we're looking at here.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, no, great question. And what I would say to everybody on the call is those scripts, A, they're sample suggestions. B, as you heard in many of those did not get into a specific date or time. I would encourage you to suggest a specific date or time in most of those scripts. And so, for example, the last one where I said, hey, it sounds like we should meet. I'm available most times this week. So what works best for you? I would actually normally, in my practice, I would turn that around and not be that generic in my ask. I would say, hey, it sounds like we should meet. I've actually got time tomorrow or Friday at 11 or 3. Which of those times works best for you? Right. I'm going to give them some specific options. And if they say neither, then I'll back up and say, well, when are you generally available? Okay, great. I've got ... So you're in control, A, of your schedule. B, it also gives them some specific things to choose from that makes sense for you and your schedule as well. So, but like I said, if you put your emails in the chat, I'll make sure to give you a copy of those sample scripts so you can use those. And then the last one is tie downs. And so tie downs are really fun. If you have not pulled those out of your Ignite scripts before, do so, and then start just practicing them. And so tie downs are phrases that ask for confirmation. And so expressions like, wouldn't that be great? Or forming questions with can't you, or isn't it, or wouldn't you, asking for an agreement, get them in the pattern of saying yes. And so, for example, Renee, hey, we'll save hours on your home search if we meet in the office first. Saving time is important to you, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. Well, great. Let's meet. And so that isn't it at the end is a tie down, and that leads them into agreement. And so, so for example, you're showing a home, and this buyer has said to you that, hey, they're really looking for a 4-bedroom, 2-bath with an attached garage, and that they don't want to look at anything that doesn't have a fenced in yard because they have kids and pets, and they send you a property that is 2-bedroom, 1-bath, and no fenced garage, and just happens to be a desperation move at this point. You can have an affirming conversation that says, you know, hey, I saw the property you sent, and I just want to make sure what's important to you. You said 4-2, fenced yard, this and that. That is what you're looking for, isn't it? And at that point, they're going to say yes or no, and you can have a clarifying conversation around what the home search is at that point. But the tie downs are actually, you can do some really fun script practices with tie downs, where you just go around the horn, and everybody in there has to have a sentence that either leads or ends with a tie down. And so I'd encourage you to master those because they're a lot of fun. So I'm going to pause there before we go on to the next slide and ask, does anybody have questions about the close?
No, I don't have a question, but my computer is acting up, so I'm going to try to restart it. And I just wanted to make sure I can get back in.
Yeah, absolutely. I see a couple people were just joining, so I'll watch that waiting room to get you in there as soon as you join back.
Awesome, folks.
Okay, well,
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned before that whoever they have a chance to be in the previews Ignite, how I can go back to see them?
Yeah, that is a great question. So I'll check with Alana. I know she had all of these recorded, and so I'll see if she's going to send out a link to those recordings as a catalog. So this is Renee, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So Renee, let me look at something really quickly.
I think in her emails, she have a link and says all Ignites can be seen here.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
I knew you had access to the docs. I couldn't recall if the recordings were in that same email or not. Perfect. Great question, Renee. Okay. So let's keep rolling. So buyer objections to the appointment. So when a buyer objects to meeting with you, what are your first thoughts? Is it rejection? Is it a definitive no? Are they being unreasonable? And those might be natural feelings or thoughts that come through our head. And at the end of the day, they're all just limiting beliefs. Believe it or not, objections are actually a good thing. So they are buying signals and another step closer to a purchase decision. So objections are actually a response to, I either don't know enough yet, or you haven't answered all my questions yet. And so instead of walking away at the first sign of an objection, there's actually a system for exploring and solving the objections right away. And so that's what you're seeing on your screen here. So the first thing to do is ask questions. So investigate deeper, ask or tell in the sense of, okay, so Amy, tell me more about that. Or Maritane, help me understand. And so at that point, if you're saying, hey, you know what? It sounds like we should meet to ... And there's like, well, I don't know. Okay, tell me more about that. You were interested in buying a house, or you're interested in this property. And so the next logical step for us would be to set that appointment so we could dig deeper into that. What are your reservations? What questions do you have? So the next thing is to empathize, to acknowledge and say, if they're saying whatever it is they say, I can certainly understand that, or I can certainly understand how you feel, right? Depending on what they're saying in that space. The next part is to identify the real issue, restate what you heard, and ask for confirmation. So, Jashelle, what I hear you saying is that you're not yet ready to meet because you want to first speak with a lender to understand what you could qualify for. Is that right?
Correct. I just want to understand what my options are before I start looking at homes to make sure that I'm looking within my budget.
Perfect. Perfect. So once we've heard that confirmation, we can move to offering a solution. Okay, so it sounds like you want to understand what your options are. So do you have a lender that you're currently working with? If not, I can connect you with ... And then after that, urge an agreement and ask again for the appointment. So, so in that case, hey, Jashelle, it sounds like you do have a lender that you've been working with and that you're going to reach out and understand what your options are. So with that in mind, how about we do this? We can set the appointment up for Thursday, 4 o'clock. That'll give you time between now and then to connect with your lender. And then we'll see you on Thursday at 4. How does that sound?
4 o'clock on Thursday sounds great.
Perfect. So that's how you can walk through the buyer objections and still lead with an appointment at the end of it. And so what's really awesome about our company is we've got our Y4C2Ts and they are represented in this very objection to the appointment slide that we're talking about. So if you think about it, we've got communication, seek first to understand. Trust starts with honesty and commitment in all things. And we're honoring those pieces of our culture as we stay in conversation and relationship with our clients, even when they might initially say, you know what, I'm not quite ready. Okay, well, let's explore that. So if a buyer continues to object to meeting after you've addressed their concerns and offered solutions, you can simply continue to cultivate the relationship and provide value just as you would with any lead or contact in your database until that day comes where they're ready to lead or ready to meet for an appointment. So I'm going to pause there. Any questions, comments on the buyer objections? Who feels, I'll ask it a different way. Who feels like they are strong in handling objections?
It's the
Okay.
opposite. I'm very weak on that, and I'll give them rent free for a while in my head.
Uh, it's really easy that we internalize a no as rejection as opposed to simply their objection. And that is certainly a switch to flip for most people entering into the sales practice side of things. And I think it's important to stay human though, right? So we're not gonna just simply steamroll objections and just keep going and be that side of it. We're going to be mindful of it by asking questions, right? We're going to stay in curiosity and ask questions, and we're going to be human. We're going to empathize, and we're going to get to the heart of really why are they slow to either acknowledge a yes or hesitant in getting an appointment. And then we're going to identify that real issue and offer a solution to that, which in and of itself is going to create a bonding moment between you and your client because they're going to see you as the expert because you're going to still offer a solution and provide a solution to something that was at the heart of their hesitation. So it's actually a pretty powerful moment when you can navigate through it. So I would encourage you to just kind of memorize these steps in your head so that you can go through that model whenever a no or a hesitation comes up. I attended a Bold where the facilitator, the Bold coach at that Bold, she was the #1 listing agent for a mega team out of Houston, and she coached in her listing presentation class that she led for us that she would she she had listed over 100 homes in a year just herself. And in her listing presentation, she would get to a point where she would ask for them to sign. And if there was hesitation, she would just meet it head on and just be like, hey, you know what? I noticed there's some hesitation. So let's talk through that. And she would go into these same types of approach. And it led to clarity and ultimately would lead to the listing appointment or the listing agreement as well. So yeah, that's a fantastic model. If you're not already using something like that, that will lead you to success and get to that appointment. So next, I think this was the slide that you were asking about earlier, where the buyer chooses to look on their own. Is that the question you were asking me earlier, where it says, I understand here are a few things to consider? Do you guys see that in your participant guide?
Yes, it's 14:6. The next
Perfect.
one.
Yeah,
Mhm.
perfect. I was going to say, and mine shows 14:15. So that just tells you how different our pages are. So yeah, so this is actually a great slide just for practice. So this one, I'm just going to pause for a minute. I'll just give us 2 minutes to let you guys read those objections and those handlers that are following that. So take 2 minutes, read that, and then we'll go to ahas. All right. So covering those objections, the buyer chooses to look on their own. David, are you still on? Do you mind reading that objection handler that's there in your book? Oh, David, you're muted. We'll shift gears and go over to Natisha. Do you mind reading that one? And welcome back, by the way.
Thank you. You mean reading the first buyer chooses to look on their own?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, great. Buyer chooses to look on their own. I understand. Here are a few things to consider. It can be a very time-consuming process with my access to the multiple listing service, MLS, and my real estate contacts. I can search all available properties for you and show you the best ones based on your need, saving you a lot of time and headache.
Perfect. Thank you. And then Mark, are you able to read that next one for us?
I'm sorry, I don't have it open. I'm doing dishes while I'm listening.
No worries at all. No worries at all. Appreciate the honesty there. And then David, you were muted, so sorry we didn't hear you the first time, sir. Can you unmute and get that second one?
I said my screen is frozen. I'm having some trouble. I'm sorry if you got my
Okay.
message or not. I'm sorry about that.
No worries at all. Do I have a volunteer to read that second one? The buyer relies on searching online.
I
I'll
don't
read.
mind. Oh, go ahead. I've already talked enough. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll go ahead. So the reality is that many times homes advertised online may not be available anymore, and how a property appears online is not the same as seeing it in person, which you'll need a licensed agent for. Finding a house is the fun part, and we can do that very efficiently based on your expectations and needs. Once you find the house, the hard work of submitting an offer and getting you to the closing table begins. This is all part of the service and expertise I provide as your fiduciary. So, okay. So ahas through this last section that we just covered.
I'm going to say the one where you said the agent hit that head on. If she noticed hesitation,
Yeah.
because that means that you're paying attention. They can tell your personal interest, that you
Mhm.
care, how they feel. You want to
Yeah.
explain things. I like that.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Who else?
Yeah, I'd like to agree. Um, it always comes off better if you're people first and more of a salesy realtor second.
Mhm. Or not even having to get to that second part, right? Just people
Yeah,
first.
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. Yeah, and I love that. We're in the people business. We're not in the sales business. And that's the magic of it is when we truly understand what our clients are looking for and we do our work and help them match with the property that speaks to what they're looking for, we're not selling it. That property's going to do itself when you find the right thing. It's us asking the right questions and hearing them so that we know how to best navigate that. So I love that. Anybody else? Okay, well, let's keep sliding through here. So now we're preparing for the buyer agreement. And so we're going to do that in the consultation. And so there's been a fair share of buyer agreement discussion in the media, hasn't there been lately? I see some heads nodding. Yeah.
I've had
Yeah.
articles sent to me about it. And
Sorry,
I've
you
had
cut out.
articles sent to me about it. And I've also had clips off YouTube sent to me about it.
Yeah. Were they accurate?
Well, it's just they're raising fear,
Right.
fear. We don't even know, and they're making these things sound so fearful.
Right. 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 I might say this more than you guys all care to hear it. But the reality is, if you've not attended that Value Squared class, please do so. It is tremendous. Uh, your comment about fear really, really triggered that reminder here because one of the biggest takeaways at the very end of that, when Jay Papasan says, "Hey, listen, when you know what to do and you know what to say, the fear goes away." So when you know what to do and you know what to say, the fear goes away. And so I applaud the fact that you're all spending some time with us tonight in Ignite because we're doing all those things. We're knowing what to do and we're knowing what to say. And it's going to empower all of us to be better fiduciaries for our clients. So, all right. Well, let's keep going. So the buyer consultation is an awesome opportunity. And so to get a signed buyer agreement, first you need to get to the appointment. And so when you make the appointment with a doctor or a dentist, do they simply tell you the time and date as you head out of the office and expect you to show back up the right time on the right day? And the answer is no, of course not. Most of them send text reminders, email reminders, auto dialer reminders, and we get reminders all the time. And so they follow up and they manage that appointment, and we have to do the same thing. And so when you're looking at your participant guide and looking at the checklist, you're going to confirm the appointment, the day and the time. You're going to confirm the appointment location. The best meeting locations, as we talked about, is your office. If it's not your office, another public space. It's not best to go to private residences for your own safety reasons. Ensure that all decision makers are able to attend. Complete your buyer guide. prepare the meeting space if it's in person, even or if it's in virtual, and then review the lead sheet. So, so who can tell me real quick, why is it important that we make sure that all decision makers are going to be present? Has anybody learned that through the School of Hard Knocks?
Yeah,
Well,
you're
so
not
a
going to
decision
move
can be made.
forward. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. If you have half of the decision makers present and you spend that time and energy, you can't move forward still until you get all the decision makers to agree to that. So getting them all in the same place at the same time saves you time and also allows you to see how that dynamic's going to work there. And so if you have to meet virtually, as we are right now, still follow your checklist and just make sure that your virtual environment is going to be professional in that space as well. So you still want all decision makers present, even if it's virtual, for the same reasons. So let's keep going. So the top 10 service areas of the buyer value proposition. So you actually saw this on day 4 in Ignite when you guys were doing your unique value proposition. So these are the top 10 areas that buyers expect and that buyers need when they're looking for a great agent to help them. So A, they need a needs analysis. B, they need that pre-qualification or pre-approval. C, they need that neighborhood information. B, the home search. E, the offer, how to make it. F, negotiating to buy. G, vendor coordination. H, pre-close preparation. I, closing, and J, post-closing. And so your buyer presentation, when you're sitting in front of them, is going to touch on all of these areas in a very personal way. So it's going to be personal to you and how you have a unique value prop and how it's going to mention or reference in all of those in that space. And it's going to be personal to your buyers based on their specific needs that you've uncovered prior to the appointment in the needs analysis. So unique value prop, remember to keep that focused on what you bring to the buyer and not just how great you are, right? We like to tell how great we are for them, but we want to make sure that we're tying it to what is important to them. So list the benefits your buyers, list the benefits you offer buyers and the compelling reasons that you work for buyers and why buyers should work with you. There's an old adage, right, that features tell and benefits sell. And so features are going to inform your buyer. Benefits are going to sell your buyer. And so what are the features of working with you versus what are the benefits of working with you? And that's where you get to be creative in your buyer presentation and really help that tailor that, A, to you, and B, then to your buyers. And so I know David and I were talking prior to this call, and he was talking about how he was able to spend some time in the last week getting his buyer presentations started to be put together and tailored to various types of buyers, right? Because we know we have veterans buyers or first-time buyers or senior buyers or divorced buyers, and the list goes on and on. And do you have buyer's guides that kind of tailor to those different life events that are happening? And so that's going to be the basis of what you can customize in your buyer guide in Command. So quick pause there. Questions on anything in the value prop of the top 10 service areas?
I like what you said, Jake, about features and benefits. So can you give an example of what would be a feature and what would be a benefit to differentiate?
Yeah. So feature, I'll keep this really basic. Feature, I am a licensed real estate professional. That is a feature, right? Benefit, I am a seasoned real estate professional with X number of years of experience working in, and then fill in the blank. right? Whether you're talking to a buyer that's a veteran or a senior, choose it there. But the difference is one is simply a feature. I'm licensed. Benefit is I'm experienced, if that makes sense. And then the awesome thing, and I love that KW teaches us this, the unique value proposition, every single one of us is unique. We bring a variety of different life experiences, professional experiences, and all of those together make us who we are. And there's not a single person out there that is the same as we are. And so when we get in front of a client, depending on who they are and what's important to them, we're going to be able to leverage different pieces of our experience and our past that either connects or resonates with them in a way that they're going to connect with you to say, yeah, this is right, let's do business. Or you're going to be able to say, hey, this is right, let's do business. Or it's not going to be a match and you can both make that decision, because that's okay too, depending on the situations. But that's kind of the simplified version of features and benefits, right? Is features tell. I can tell you I'm a licensed agent. That means nothing really to you other than you have confidence that I'm licensed. Benefit is I've helped 25 buyers in the last 12 months that were veterans, and we navigated the veterans VA process and helped them come out successfully. And most of those also were able to walk away from closing with cash in their pocket, right? That's a benefit of working with me.
Right. And so for a newly licensed agent with no profile, ways to highlight those features would be more on the characteristics based on what I bring to the table of working with me, regardless of if I ever closed or not.
That's right. That's right. You have a ton of features and benefits. So you have features that are specific to KW, to your market center, to your own professional experience. And that's where then benefits are, because of your own professional experience and because of the other features that KW and your market center offer, you're packaging those as a benefit that are going to do different things that others can't do. You're going to help them save time. Yeah, you're going to help them save more time, more money, or get it done faster or easier.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was always also thinking that we just can tell them how trained we are.
Yeah.
We may not have the experience, but we're in a market center that trains us. So have confidence because we know what we're doing. And we have a team that.
That's right. Yeah. One of the most powerful things I learned as a newly licensed agent years ago was the term we, W-E. So when you're out there in the field, whether you're a new agent or an agent of 20 plus years or anywhere in between, the power of we always takes the perception of your clients to a different place. Because when you're talking about we offered this, we deliver this, we accomplished this, it's never just you. The pressure's not just you. That spreads it all across your market center, your team, your KW family, and it lifts you up and empowers you to be we. So I love that, Amy. Appreciate you sharing that. Okay. Buyer guide contents. And so buyer guide, this is a quick snapshot of a lot of the things that are most commonly included in buyer's guides. So let's take just a couple minutes and we don't have to read them out loud, but just read over it real quick so you can kind of have a feel for what's in it. So guys, as you look at this list, so what is this list? What do all the things on this list do for your buyer? What does it give them?
Give them confidence.
Yeah, love that. Do you think it gives them value?
Yes.
Yeah. I look at this and I see information. I see what to expect. I see answers to questions. I see kind of a roadmap to the buying process. I see things to help them avoid mistakes. I see some setting expectations of the process and what that relationship with you as their agent looks like. And I think holistically, it shows them that you know what you're doing, positions you as the expert. And I think that's really powerful. We've learned in the past Ignite sessions, right? We're always saying, here's what to expect next. Here's what's happening next. This, in a very concise way, kind of gives you a snapshot of, okay, there's a lot of what happens next. And it's pretty neat. So an informative and compelling buyer's guide explains the buying process. And it answers the questions that buyers have, and even those that they didn't even know to ask. So it educates the buyer, it shows your credibility, and it gives you a guide to follow during the presentation. So you don't necessarily have to have a script memorized in this conversation, because you can literally walk through your buyer's guide as a roadmap to the conversation. And so this next comment kind of ties into where we talked earlier. Not every buyer's guide is going to be the same for every buyer, because not every buyer is the same. And so you may have investors that will tend to want different information than a first-time home buyer. Somebody who grew up in the area may not need all the same detail that somebody who didn't grow up in the area may need. And so it doesn't mean that you have to create a totally different guide every time. It just may mean that you've got some pages that you slide in or slide out, depending on the buyer that you're going to assist. And so Command gives you that option to create pages and then print certain pages. And so you can have those buyer guides ready in Command, and you can create multiple copies if you want to have, for example, a first-time home buyer or a senior or a veteran home buyer experience. You can have those guides already created and just customize them to the buyer that you're going to go talk to. So, so what questions does anybody have on any of the either buyer guide contents or the concept of kind of creating kind of custom guides depending on your buyer? Okay. So the fun part begins in Command. So now that you know that there's some options to do, you can go into Command and leverage the template that's in there. And so Command has us covered, and you would simply just go into Command, go into Designs, create design, create a print design, and then the buyer and buyer presentation. And so there's templates in there, and they're fully customizable to match you personally and your value proposition. So I'm going to keep us rolling for the sake of time so we don't run out of time here by the end. But here, the buyer guide, I think it jumped 2 slides on that one. Hang tight. Yeah. Okay. So your buyer guide should always start with the table of contents. And this is kind of a what to expect page as you get to your appointment and you open this up and start to talk with your client. And so each section of this is going to give you a different level of confidence with the client as it builds confidence in your client with you. And so table of contents is your simple roadmap as you go there. And so asking, as you prep for creating your buyer guide, resources that you should have to prepare your presentation for your client: buyer lead sheets, which is your needs analysis and pre-qualification. You should have your MLS data that you may want to include in there, your market center assets like any logos, and then your specific address, photos, and contact information so you can make it personal to yourself. So okay. First page sets the tone, and I'm going to call on Natisha. What's the biggest words that you see on this page, and what are they?
You know, it's always hard to find the unmute button. The biggest words are your needs come first.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that Mark said it earlier, right? When we keep it about the people, we keep it about the people. And that's this. So we have our table of contents that we say, all right, here are all the things that we're going to cover this evening. And boom, we go straight to the next page and that's it. Like we're going to talk about you. And it really sets the stage both for the appointment and the relationship and the buying experience. And so don't short sell this page and this part of the conversation, because it really does accomplish a lot of things in this space. So you can see, and I can't zoom. I don't think I can zoom on this. But you can see on here, it's going to get into focusing on them and visualize and helping them visualize what they want to accomplish in that buying experience so that you can start to build an emotional connection in there and get them tied emotionally to the dream that they have about that next property. So this is where, and I can't recall who said it earlier, this is where we're going to get into the preference profile and we're going to find out, okay, exactly what are you looking for in your next property? And you can customize this. So you can use what's there, you can change what's there, you can add to what's there, or take away from what's there. But this is really where you're going to get into what's important to you. And I think I said that I got ahead of myself there, but this one's actually the preference profile for communications and anticipated timeline. So we'll get into the actual profile piece of the other later. But this is where we were talking about, hey, I don't want to take calls after 9, or I don't take calls after 9, and that I'll set the expectations that I'll have my messages returned by 8 a.m. the next morning, or your clients tell you, hey, I don't like to take calls after 4 on Wednesdays, or whatever it is. This is where you get to keep track of all of that information. Here's the wish list that I was talking about. So what are your non-negotiables? If you had to name your top 5 non-negotiables, what would they be? Do you have a preference for the year the house was built? Do you need a house in moving condition, or would you like to do a little bit of work on it? How do you want to feel when you walk into your home? Those are all questions that you're going to help create that wish list. And then neighborhood insights. Has anybody on here used the neighborhood insight on command yet? You can literally type in a neighborhood or zip code and it will give you sales data, pending, sold, average price, days on market, that kind of data. It will give you that for the neighborhood or the zip code that you can then pull into as a graphic into your presentation. And so that may or may not be important to your buyer, but if it is, you can leverage it. And so what this does for you, though, is this helps you position yourself as the expert in the market. Okay. So with this one, Amy, when you look at this one, Buyer Guide, How Home Buying Works, why would this be important for a buyer in a conversation?
So I don't have that in my workbook.
Okay.
And I'm on my phone.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of small.
No pressure. It's hard to see on a phone because it's hard to see on my computer already. So I can imagine what it looks like on your phone. So I'll throw this out there like this. What this is a roadmap, right? This is a roadmap how buying a home works. It's basically the process in kind of a bullet point format. And a buyer who knows what to expect is a confident buyer. A confident buyer is easier to work with than an anxious buyer. And a confident buyer has fewer objections because they know what to expect. So a buyer who knows what to expect is also educated and is not going to do things accidentally that endanger their home ownership journey. What might be an example of something a buyer may do unintentionally that endangers their home ownership journey?
Buy a car.
Yes.
Change jobs.
Yes. Yes. And I laugh because I've seen all of those things, and we all have, I'm sure. And so, buy a car, buy a boat, change jobs, take out lines of credit, finance furniture, all the things that they are excited to do because they think they're going to have this nice new home to do these things with, and they don't understand that those things jeopardize their lending position. And so, so this helps set those expectations, and it puts you in a position of being the expert. Finally, a buyer who knows what to expect because you gave them information is grateful, and a trusting buyer who is going to work with you again and again and send you referrals. So if you're the agent that helps them be confident, less nervous, and helps them avoid pitfalls and get to the finish line just smoothly, that's somebody they're going to recommend both for continued business for themselves, but also to their friends and family. And that's huge. That's huge. So this is just a quick disclosure moment. We, through Keller, have both Keller Mortgage and Keller Covered. Keller Mortgage offers mortgage products. Keller Covered offers insurance products. And so if you are ever in a position where you're talking about either one of those and connecting a client with either one of those, you as a Keller Williams agent are required to provide the affiliated business arrangement disclosure so that they know that Keller Williams has an affiliated business relationship with either of those parties that you're referring them to. And so any questions about what that really means? It's pretty straightforward. And if you end up making a referral to either one of those, that's actually part of the process when they get onto the online portal for either one of those, that they acknowledge an affiliated business arrangement between those two. Okay. Guide to your value proposition. So again, we are in the buyer's guide. These are all sample pages that can be in your buyer's guide. And you asked a question earlier about if you're a newer agent that doesn't have a book of business in the past yet, and you're still building that book, these are pages that you can leverage, and they don't have to be your personal numbers. They can be, if you're on a team, they can be your team's numbers. If you're in the market center, you can use the market center's numbers. But it helps present yourself in a accomplished way. And that gets back to my earlier takeaway as we. So you are part of we. You're always part of we. And when you're part of we, you can use the numbers of we. And so, so your market center, you can work with your TL, your ATL, your OP, your MCA, whoever in your market center can help you pull those numbers, but you can populate your numbers into here and be ready to talk through those when you're sitting in front of your buyers to help them understand the success that your team, that you're a part of, your support network has accomplished. And I want to pause there because that's a little bit of a bigger thought. So questions on that or thoughts? Why do you think buyers might, or sellers in a different conversation, might have an opinion on seeing this information?
They're going to know that you're working, or it appears that you're working, because if we use these numbers, I get nervous about using them because I'm like, what if they start asking me questions about it?
Yeah, no, I love that you shared that, because the reality is we all might get a little nervous if we're asked questions we're not prepared for. And so it kind of goes back to that, when you know what to do and you know what to say, the fear goes away. So I would encourage all of us on the line tonight, you don't have to use these pages. If you so choose to use these pages, you can use them for your numbers, your team numbers, or your market center numbers. And if you do, practice running through it. Do a quick role play with your TL or another leader in your market or another agent in your market. And if you don't know what the numbers are tied back to or what they mean, that's okay too. Ask the questions. That's how you're going to learn. but guess what happens when you learn? You become a more confident agent. And when you become a more confident agent, you become a more confident agent for your clients as well. And so this is pretty neat. And it's another benefit within KW that you can really take pride in, that you can leverage this. And so you're not alone. And you never will be when you're in KW. You're not alone. You're always part of we. I'm just going to read you here what our facilitator guide kind of talks through a little bit about this, because it says, as a new agent, you may choose to provide data from you or your team or your market center or even KW International, right, to present your best value story. So as your business grows, you can track your own success and update the numbers if you would choose to or so choose to. And so that's really a big piece of this. And the other part of it is in this section, it also contains testimonials that you can work to get as you help clients. And so why are testimonials important? What does that do for you? Do online reviews of a business or a service provider, has anybody ever read an online review before choosing to do business with somebody?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Sometimes with a grain of salt, sometimes not, but nonetheless, we tend to care, whether we trust or not. We do tend to care what others might have said about a provider before. And so if you have a couple of client testimonials in your buyer's presentation, it is another layer of confidence to your buyer. And what does it do for you if you're affirmed with somebody that had a great experience with you? How does that make you feel?
That you really what you were doing as that you guided them in the right direction.
Yeah.
And they felt good about their decision of working with you.
That's right. And so if you're in the middle of a buyer presentation and you flip across the page and it's got a couple of quick little blurbs about, man, this person was awesome when they helped me. It was the best experience I've had buying a house. Does that give you a little boost of confidence in the mid moment of a presentation with your client as well? Yeah, it sure does. And I think this has so many good layers to it. So leverage the company, because the company's put some great things in this place for you. So I'm going to pause there. Ask for any ahas going through that buyer's guide presentation and what could be included in it and how we could modify it depending on our clients. So what were some ahas from that section? Pretty quiet out there tonight.
I really love the idea of having a buyer's guide. So it makes you look more professional and knowledgeable. So I would like to use it, but I'm trying to go where you went. I can't find it.
The buyer's guide. Oh, are you in Command looking for it?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. I don't know. If you want help with that, send me a note and I'm happy to help navigate that offline. I could take you there now, but it might take up the remainder of our time to help navigate you online through this in this space. But no, you're 100% spot on. It absolutely does help position you as the professional in that space. So thank you for sharing. Who else?
Jake, when you get, go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry, David, go ahead.
When you get those positive kudos at the end, it also is going to help you get better referrals. It's going to be easier to get the referrals from those other people who have trust and confidence in you, that gave you that good check in the block that moves you forward, gives you a better boost in confidence. And it's going to be easier for somebody else to recommend you as a referral to somebody else.
That's right. Spot on. I heard somebody else jumping in as well. Who else was going to share?
Oh, I was just gonna kind of ditto what they both said, actually. The command also was the aha for me that I can, because I'm learning it now. The fact that this is in here and I just have to put in specific information. I think another thing that would be useful is sort of like a guide to a questionnaire. I think a lot of the questions were in here, but that would be, a nice to have. But this is awesome. So this is awesome. I found it and I can help anyone who's interested in finding it as well. So
great.
It's great.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will tell you this, it's fun. I was with a recruit today who's considering joining our company, and it is certainly a great point of pride as a Keller Williams associate to be able to say how open we share our systems and models and things that we do. So if you guys want copies of things we've got, we share. If you've got copies that we would like and you're willing to share, that's the same. And it's a reflection of the culture and the people that choose to do business in Keller Williams. And so kudos. Thank you for that. It's not that way everywhere. I'll just say it that way. Last piece of this evening is conducting the buyer consultation. And this is really now, so you've set the appointment, you've committed, and you've got your buyer's guide ready to go. And now you're actually at the appointment, you're getting ready to conduct the buyer's consultation. And so going into it with a mindset that's positive is critical. And so one way to combat any negative thinking is through affirmations. And so this is an affirmation that is in our Ignite to help us get our mind right around going into our consultation. So I am knowledgeable and caring and the best agent for these clients. They will appreciate my expertise and preparation and choose me to represent them as they buy a home. And so I'm going to say it again. I am knowledgeable and caring and the best agent for these clients, and they will appreciate my expertise and preparation, and they will choose me to represent them as they buy a home. So if you can think in that mindset, get your mind right around that before you go into your appointment, it will pay dividends as you sit across the table and have a fantastic conversation. And so now that you're confident, you're going in and you're starting the presentation. So effective delivery of the buyer presentation begins with welcoming the buyer and setting the expectations for the appointment. And so we are going to not do a role play here, but I'm going to read you through what that sounds like. And so I'm going to use Amy as my buyer. And so I'm going to say, Amy, thank you for letting me help you. My goal is to give you a 10+ customer experience. To do that, I'd like to get a clear idea of what you're looking for in a new home. So with your permission, I'd like to spend the next 20 to 30 minutes exploring what the right home for you would look like. We'll call this your 10+ home. With your permission, I'd like to write some notes as we go along so I remember everything that's important to you. And I know it may seem like a lot, but I'd rather ask you 500 questions now and show you the right 5 homes than ask you 5 questions now and waste your time showing you the wrong 500 homes. So how does that work for you?
I think it's perfectly understandable.
Great. So for the group, how does that conversation help set buyer expectations? So you heard the script, you heard me roll through that, you heard Amy's response. How does that set buyer expectations? What does that accomplish?
You know what are you going to do?
That's right. Did it set time expectations?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Did it set some expectations that I was probably going to be asking quite a few questions? Yep. set some expectations and I'm going to take some notes? Yep. And why is taking notes? Why is that important? What does that do for your buyer to see you taking notes?
It lets you know, like you said in the beginning, that their needs are important, and also should they need to be reminded, well, this is what you told me on this day. So I wrote it down because this is what you stated that you wanted. So did we change? Or
right.
something changed that, I need to do my scripts, but that's where I'm going with it. Like, well, this is what you told me. Is there something that, I should reconsider that'll better help me service you? Because this is what you told me on this date. Do we need to revisit, so that I'm able to better serve you?
That's spot on. That's spot on. Yep. It affirms.
So you're an active listener. You're listening. You're just not teasing them. You're actually listening to what their actual needs and wants are.
That's right. That's right. I'm taking notes of the words you say because that's important to me and you're important to me. And the notes function in that space to build confidence and trust. And then they also function in that follow-up space later as you have to have clarifying conversations to say, this is where we started. Are we still on that path or do we need to adjust expectations? So absolutely. So the conversation helps the buyer know why it's important to spend time with you, also discussing their wants and needs before looking at houses. This ultimately is going to save the buyer time later in the process and be sure that you are both laser focused on the homes that will make them happy. So it's truly an empowering and clarifying conversation. And so on the screen, you'll see buyer needs analysis. So a big part of your buyer consultation is going to be filling out the needs analysis. And this is where you're going to listen a whole lot more than you talk. And these questions are set out in that buyer presentation in Command. So if you're having trouble finding that, happy to help. And then they're also in your participant guide. So it says, so if somebody can confirm that, that would be helpful for me. So do you see these pages and these questions in your participant guide?
Are these the ones right here that we don't have the pictures.
Do you have the categories though of like exterior, interior, bedrooms, bathrooms? Can you see any of that in your participant guide? Okay. Thank you for that. I always like to affirm whenever it says it's in there. So it is in Command in that buyer guide that's in Command. And so again, if you need help getting into Command to see that, holler. My contact information's in the chat. So this is really where you're going to get into the nuts and bolts of what they're looking for in the specific features of the property. And so, Natisha, this is another example of everything you're going to ask them for in this space are all features, right? So these are all features. A 4-bedroom house, a 2-bath house, a 2-car, 3-car garage, whatever it is, those are all features. And what you're going to understand from their motivation is, why is that important to you? So if I'm going to ask you, Natisha, why is it important for you to have a 4-bedroom property that we're looking for? Why is 4 bedrooms minimum the right property for you? What might you say? What could be some options there?
So that I can have office space and space for guests to come and stay with us.
Yeah, fantastic. So you just answered me with a benefit. So does that make sense?
Yes.
So 4 bedrooms is a feature. Benefits is so that you've got room for guests and an office. Now you're speaking to their emotions and you're solving to their problems. And now you're listening to what's important to them when you're talking to them. That rings so differently than simply saying, okay, 4 bedrooms is important, but I didn't ask why. Once I know why, I can motivate you because I heard you say that hosting guests and having an office are important to you. So that's the important of getting into this, so that when you are having clarifying conversations, you can stay true to really why they want to accomplish what they want to accomplish. Okay, this next slide, a lot of discussion in this over the last several years. But the buyer love letter that was really common, especially in COVID and post-COVID year when the buyer market was just really, really crazy. A lot of buyers would write these letters saying, "We love your house because ... And then they would send it with their offer. And you see on there, love letter is X'd out, and then liability letter is written beside there. So too many times, those letters that would accompany offers would divulge information about the buyer that is considered a protected class from an equal housing violation. So if I wrote a letter and I say, "Hey, Amy, I really hope you pick our offer because my wife and I love your house and we can't wait to see our kids open their Christmas presents on Christmas morning. And all of a sudden, I've told you that I'm married, I have kids, I might be Christian because I celebrate Christmas, and you might factor those into your decision to say yes or no to my offer. And that's against the law." So buyer letters are discouraged. So if you have a buyer that says, "Hey, what about doing ... you just want to professionally help them understand why that is not recommended. And so that's what that slide is really covering there.
Jake, I got a letter one time too.
You did?
And mine went, "I really need this home," or "my client really needs this home because she has her mother has had a stroke and needs the room to the side of the kitchen, blah, 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 blah." I mean, I was overwhelmed because that was my very first listing.
Yeah.
And it does tug at your heart, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've had, even as recently as this last year, I've had a client ask me if they could and should write one because they felt compelled and wanted to share their sentiments with the seller. And we just kind of educated similar to what we did here on the call to help them see the other side of that. And so also in the area that we're in, we've got brokerages that will put it in the private remarks to say, just don't send it, we won't present it. So that's kind of where the market's evolving to, is just to not do them at all. So, okay. Well, I'm going to go to this next slide and we're going to pause. Oh, hang tight. I think, there we go. Ahas around the consultation process, using your buyer's guide, having a confident conversation, and connecting with the buyer in the consultation. Any ahas coming out of that? Thoughts, questions? What was one thing, somebody share one thing that you took out of there that you can put into action in your next appointment with a buyer?
Can I talk about that love letter again?
Yeah, yeah.
Because that came from a buyer agent since I was on the listing side. But I know now from tonight, I didn't realize that that's against the law to do that. I was just told that's a love letter, don't do it. But I didn't know why. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. And the love letter itself is not against the law. The risk is what they may include in the love letter itself. And that's where it gets risky at that spot, because we're not writing it for them and we don't know what they're going to divulge. And if we start to coach them on what to or what not to divulge, then we're crafting it for them. And that's not what we should be in the business of doing. So, Okay,
But
last section. Oh, go
I have a
ahead.
question about the liability letter. So what the difference that make between the love letter you say that is not recommended, but the liability one is okay?
Yeah, no, what they're saying there, Renee, is just the love letter is a liability letter, so not to do it. That's what they're saying there.
So period, not write any letter.
Right, right. Yeah. Okay, this is the home stretch right here. So the goal of a buyer's consultation is what? What do we want to walk out of that buyer appointment with?
A buyer.
Yeah, that's
Signed
right, a buyer.
agreement.
That's right. We say a buyer, and what that really means is a signed buyer agreement. And so that's it. And so ultimately you're going into um you're going into hang tight. Our slides are getting a little weird on us here. You're going into the last part of that conversation and closing for the agreement. And so that's really where you're asking them, now that you've seen the value I provide and we've talked about what you're looking for, let's do business, right? And so you're closing for the appointment at that. And that's where we started this whole conversation at the very beginning is what's the best and simplest way to ask for the close or for the signing of the commitment? Is to ask. It's just simply to ask. And so you're just going to ask. So now that we've discussed this, Natisha, what questions do you have about the process? You know what? I think I'm good. Okay, great. So the next step is just to get this buyer's agreement signed that explains my services to you, the cost of our services to you, and how those services are covered. And then we're going to get started. How does that sound?
That sounds awesome. Very clear, concise, and transparent.
Fantastic. Okay. So team, that brings us to our lead gen section on purpose, right as we wrapped up the call. And so it's intended that you guys can do your lead gen on your time and not have to be on the call to do it and come back for this evening. And so we've got a couple minutes left. I would ask if anybody has any other questions or other areas that you'd like to cover or go through. I'm happy to readdress or answer questions.
Okay, quick question. It's not about the buyers though.
Yeah.
So I have sellers. I'm getting ready to list their house. At first they were going to pay the buyer's agent. Husband came back and said, no, we don't want to pay the buyer's agent. I was like, are you kidding me? No, I know we need the practice, but no, not right now. Don't do that.
Okay, so how did that conversation go?
Well, I'm going to try to encourage them to pay the buyer's agent because they're eliminating a good number of buyers. Like okay, I'm just going to say it. I know we can't steer, but for this particular community, you're eliminating FHA and possible VA buyers. So I'm going to have to reiterate that in a way. I'm going to speak with my coach, but I was just curious to see what you would say in this instance to get them to jump on board with paying the buyer's agent.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question. So I'm going to pause before I provide my answer and just see what the rest of the participants here think about that. So does anybody have any thoughts or input on the question that's posed?
No, we want to hear from you.
Oh, you're so ornery. You're so ornery. No, no, I really appreciate that question. And I will tell you, and what was that, Sheila, was that you asking the question?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So here's really the answer to that question, in my opinion. And I've been through the value squared class, and the value squared class 100% addresses that very question at a deep level. And so I'm not sure, I'm looking real quick. If you guys, what are you guys seeing on your screen right now? Do you still see, Do you still see my slides, or do you see me scrolling through another deck right now?
Scrolling through a deck.
Good, good. So you're seeing the right thing. I was trying to pull this up real quick because we have the slides from the value squared class.
And you know what?
As
I
what?
haven't even watched that yet, and I knew that I should have.
Ah, yes. Well, take the
Great.
time. It's next week as well, April 10th, and then again April 25th. So here's the short version. Here's the short version is Mr. Seller. You're hiring me to help you net the most amount of money for your house. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. Fantastic. And you trust me as the professional in the situation to do what's necessary to help you get the most amount of money for your house. Is that right?
Yes.
Sure. Yeah. Right. Okay. So when I make a recommendation to you on how we do get you the most amount of money for your house, you trust what I say because I'm the professional. Is that right?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So when we're talking about how we net you the most amount of money for your property, would you say that we would have a better chance of netting you more if we had more buyers competing for your property or fewer buyers competing for your property?
That's good. I mean, but yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it makes sense, right? That the more buyers we have competing for your property, that the more likely it is that there's going to be some competition and help you net the most for your house. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So with that in mind, how do we get the most amount of buyers competing for your property? We keep it open to as many buyers as possible. Some buyers are able to cover their commissions, some buyers are not and need to roll that into their purchase price. So with that in mind, and then ... you can pivot to the next part of your conversation about where you're going with your fee and your commission rate. So does that help?
Yes.
Okay. Questions on that conversation? Because you're still likely going to have some pushback, but the reality of it is what you're doing is you're positioning yourself as the expert because you are. You're asking them if they trust you as the expert, which they do because they're hiring you. And so really you want to keep the focus on what's most important to them. If and here's the real deal. If they're interested in selling their house for either the fastest amount of time or the most amount of money, and that's 99.9% of the sellers out there, is they either want the most amount of money in the least amount of time. That's usually it. Then we do that by attracting the most amount of buyers to compete for your property. So how do we attract the most amount of buyers?
Mm-hmm.
We make, yeah. And that's just a very honest and real conversation. There's a slide that I'm looking for real quick. I know we're almost out of time, but let me try to find this slide because it really helps address that specific question as well. It doesn't necessarily give you that script, but it does. It does reinforce the notion of right here. So 13 reasons the seller wants the buyer to be represented by a professional realtor. And this is a list that's covered in that value squared class. And this is not comprehensive in the sense that it's the only 13 reasons. This is just the 13 reasons that made it to the slide. But the seller and listing agent will work with the buyer's agent that's been fingerprinted and undergone background checks. Buyer's agent will service as an intermediary that gives the seller the best chance of reaching an agreement. Buyer's agents can work with the listing agent to problem solve, help bridge differences between clients, and so on and so forth. But this 13 bullet slide is available to all of you through Connect. If you go out and type value squared in Connect, you can pull this up. Many of our agents in our market center are now using this in their buyers and sellers presentations, right? There's a ton of material in here that really helps give you strong reasoning in your consultations with your buyers and sellers to know why it's important to work with both. So, Sheila, I hope that helps.
Oh my God, it's so much.
Good. Good. Well, again, my email's in the chat, so if you want to chat one off, just holler. And then real quick, before I wrap us up on Zoom, is there anybody else that has questions or comments that before we wrap up? Okay. Well, listen, I appreciate y'all hanging with me tonight. You are at an awesome company, the best company in real estate, and I'm proud to be in business with each and every one of you. And I hope you've got my email, you've got my cell. I hope that if you have any questions or comments, feel free to reach out anytime in the future. So have a great evening, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jake. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, good night.
Good night.